Cool. Hopefully everyone can see this, and if there's any issues, Anthony can yell at us from the sidelines. But this is our next virtual meetup for Hedera. You're going to learn how to code and deploy your first Hedera web app from your browser. And I'm super excited to be joined by our guest today. It's Pablo Pelliard. He's the co-founder and chief decentralizer at Hashing Systems. Would you like to introduce yourself, Pablo?
Hey, everybody. Well, Cooper said it. I'm a chief decentralizer of Hashing Systems. I'm the founder. And yeah, we help decentralized applications get started. We help decentralize them. We help get their tooling right, get started on Hedera Hashgraph, as well as deploy our own decentralized applications.
That's awesome. Do you want to talk maybe just a little bit about your background, who you are, what you were doing before you decided to found Hashing Systems?
Totally. So the last few years, I've been on a bit of an entrepreneurial sprint. I had worked at a few social media startups. I spent half a year working at Consensus, starting Grid Plus, where we did decentralized electricity trading, which is really where I started learning a lot about Ethereum and how decentralized ledgers work. And that's really when I got the decentralized bug.
Yeah, that's when it kind of clicked for you.
Yeah, just seeing how you're able to deploy something, not like an application where you can easily be deplatformed, like on iOS or any platform really. And you can create value as an open source developer, where if people build with you, you create value. It's not like someone will just take the code and run off with it, kind of like Amazon Web Services or other applications.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. I think it was a difficult thing for me to really understand as well, the true value of, decentralization. And when I talk to people and I talk to, your average person about how Facebook and some of these things work, and the fact that Facebook could just change your comments and you just have to trust them. And really for any type of centralized infrastructure, you just have to trust the infrastructure provider. So that's interesting that that's kind of how you came to this space. And so how'd you find Hedera?
I really, well, I've heard about Hedera since DEFCON 4, DEFCON 3. It's been a minute. And I met Lehman back at Hedera 18 in the hackathon. And I got to work on the project, work on the platform, the SDKs, and really get a feel of what is different about Hedera and how does it compare to different applications like Ethereum or Bitcoin. I learned the importance of governance. I mean, we have been seeing a lot of issues with Bitcoin, just lacking governance, which really dampened the potential the platform could have. And it's just one of those very new systems that people will understand the value in the future as they see projects grow, where you have a proper governing system, you're able to really execute a vision rather than on a whim.
Yeah, that's super interesting to hear your background and how you came to Hedera, and as well as some of the things that are exciting you about what we're doing. So now that we kind of know who Pablo is, I'm going to just start into our agenda here. And so there's really three parts of what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to walk you through the introduction to our new Hadera JavaScript SDK. This is actually going to be one of the first times that Hedera is kind of publicly talking about it and sharing it with the world. So I'm very excited about that. Pablo is going to be taking the lead for part 2 here, and he's going to be walking you through how you can build your first web app that's on Hedera Hashgraph with a variety of tools that are built by himself and the team at Hashing Systems. After that awesome demo, we're going to be diving into some of the ecosystem news and some of the kind of updates for the Hedera developer community that we've been working on since the last virtual meetup. So now we're just going to actually just dive straight into item 1 here. And what we're going to do is I'm going to start by providing a little context. So I don't know if you can still see my screen here. But so this is Hedera's JavaScript SDK. You can see it's just at hashgraph /Hedera JavaScript SDK.js. And so there's a variety of things going on here. I'm just going to talk about kind of the high level points before we dive into the actual code demos and how you can get started with it yourself. But it's worth noting that this is actually written in TypeScript, but it's something that you can compile from TypeScript and use in your node environments, and you can use it in your actual browser-based JavaScript as well. But if you're looking to contribute to the SDK itself, we really like the type safety that TypeScript provides and how that maps to Hedera's protocol buffers. So we're happy about this. And it says here it supports running both in browser with Webpack and in Node. So you can install it just like you can with any of your other favorite Node tools with NPM, Yarn, some of these new tools that are coming out as well. And it's super, super easy to do all of your core functionality. So creating a client to the network, actually checking your balance. You can see just some of the basic examples here. And because Hedera's JavaScript SDK is something that has to communicate sometimes from a browser, you're going to need sometimes to actually have a proxy to the network. There's one that's nicely provided by the team at my Hedera wallet or my HBAR wallet. But you can actually see the instructions if you don't want to use their proxy that's hosted for you for hosting your own gRPC protocol proxy and communicating trustlessly with your own infrastructure. One thing that is worth mentioning, though, is that the examples that you see here and in this examples folder are going to be slightly different than the actual examples I'm going to talk you through today. We're going to be running through the examples that's actually on the v.0.8.beta branch. And this is the most recent updates to the JavaScript SDK. And this is, if you're already a Hedera developer, this is an update that's actually going to bring it very close to on par with the functionality, the syntax, and the performance that you see with our Java SDK. So yeah, now you know where this is. If you have any issues when you go through any of these things, please just file an issue here, and we're going to get you support pretty quickly. You can see I've actually been filing some myself in the past week or two. But cool, so now that we have that context, I'm actually just going to pull up a environment really quickly. And Pablo, if you have any questions here, I don't know how familiar you are with our JavaScript SDK. Knowing you, I'm sure you're pretty familiar. But if you have any questions or if there's something you want to talk about or pause and dive deeper into, we should definitely do that. Mm-hmm. So what I'm going to do is just open VS Code. If you're a web developer and don't know what VS Code is, you should look into it. I'm just going to create a terminal from here so that we don't have to deal with whether you're on Linux or Mac or Windows or whatever you're doing. And so you can see it'll actually just open it wherever you are. I'm just going to move to my desktop, and you can see that I have some examples here. So I'm going to go into these examples. And we're going to make a new directory for maybe JavaScript SDK. We're going to move into that JavaScript SDK, and then we're actually just going to run, npm init, and we're going to create a new JavaScript node package. Since it's just a super simple demo, we're going to plug it in with all the defaults here. And just, yes, this is fine. Cool. So now we should have the bare bones of a node package just by running npm init. And we're going to open this up within our VS Code window here. Cool. So you should see that all that I have in this new folder is my package JSON. There's nothing in it, obviously. But you can see I'm in the JavaScript SDK now. And so what we're going to do first is probably install .env or .env. I don't actually know how to pronounce it, but just a way to actually manage your keys and have them in a secure environment in your project here. Cool. So I did. Sorry if I'm going a little fast here, Pablo. Tell me to slow down if I need to. But I ran npm.i.env here to install that environment package. And then the next thing that we're going to do is actually just install the JavaScript SDK. So you can do npm i, and then I don't want to get this wrong because we have to install that specific version of the package. So we're going to do npm install save at hashgraph SDK. And so this is just going to install, the standard release that it's on. But what we want to do is install the beta at version 0.8.0-beta.0. Oh no, what did I do wrong?
I think there was an extra dot.
Yes, good catch. At least I think that is right. Yes. And so if you're actually going and installing this from GitHub, you're going to want to install it and match this tag specifically so that you know exactly what version you're actually installing. So that way you can test out the latest features. There's going to be, alpha and beta releases as well. But cool, so you can see that I actually successfully installed all these packages that are related to the Hashgraph TypeScript or JavaScript SDK. And you can see that it's actually updated our dependencies. So now that we have a way to manage our environment and the TypeScript SDK setup, we can actually just get started here. And the first thing we're going to do is just create a .env file in the root of our node project. I'm going to copy and paste my credentials from our testnet account. No one needs to look at this. I'm actually probably going to stop sharing my screen really quickly. People can totally take your testnet keys just like they can take your mainnet keys, among other things. It's not the end of the world because you can update them and it's not, real money and things like that. But it's good to practice good security there. So I actually just updated this .env. There's a chance that I might feel otherwise and just show you what that format looks like. But really all that it is it's a node address that has your node that you're connecting to. It's the node ID of that node that you're connecting to. And then we have this other key value format where you have your operator key, which is my private key. And then this would be, my private key here. And then you have your operator ID, which is just your account ID. So this is the format that I just threw into this .env file, if you were curious.
It would be good to note that the keys that you're using, they are basically your signature. So yeah. What the network accepts is, you signed it, that's you. But you also provide an identifier, which is the 0.0.1 on that example.
Yeah, good thing to note. So Hedera has this really nice thing where you can have like an account, which is your unique identifier on the network. And then you can actually have, threshold keys or a lot of different key types kind of underneath this unique identifier that make it easy to use. But cool. So now we have an index.js. We have a package JSON that has all of our dependencies. And we have a .env, which has all that information we just talked about. What we're going to do now is just the most basic example of getting started on Hedera, which is getting my account balance. It's probably the most basic API that Hedera provides. So what we're going to do is require the .environment. So that's the actual package that'll let us load this environment here. I'm going to do some copying and pasting just so you guys don't all have to watch me type here, but I'll explain what I'm doing. So this next line, we're defining variables. We have a client and the account balance query that we're importing from that JavaScript SDK. And next, we're going to write an asynchronous function that's actually going to write this account balance query to the Hedera network and wait for a response. Because Hedera is an asynchronous environment, you have to write asynchronous functions. And so I'm going to copy and paste some kind of bloat or some boilerplate that you'll find in our examples here. So all that this is doing is taking our operator key from that .environment file, and then we're taking our account ID from that .environment folder as well. And if for whatever reason we can't load those things, we're going to print you out an error and tell you need to include those. Next, we're actually going to build our client and our connection to Hedera. So I'm going to copy and paste this again, but we're going to walk you through what's actually going on here. So client is this other thing that we actually imported directly from the JavaScript SDK. And to basically create the bare minimum connection, so that the MVP of sorts of what you need to do is you need to point it to the network and say, hey, I want to submit this transaction to this node and to this account ID. And then I want to have the connection to this network be operated by my account. So this is my ID and that private key that Pablo was talking about signing transactions with earlier. And so with this information alone, this is all that we actually really need to be able to connect to the Hedera network with this JavaScript SDK. And so now it's super easy. If we want to get our balance, we can do const balance, and we're going to write await because that's waiting for that asynchronous function. And we're going to write an account balance query. But we're also going to set the account ID and set that to my account. And then we're also going to set execute. So we're actually going to run this balance query. And we're going to say that the client that we just created is going to be the connection that's running this balance query. And then basically all that we're going to do is print out the results of this in a nicely formatted way. So we're going to say that the operator account has a balance that's equal to the value of this query. So hopefully that makes sense. Pablo, is there anything that I didn't explain or we should circle back to here?
I think it would be good to mention that this is a free query. And
absolutely.
There's different types of queries on Hedera. This is arguably the most important one, just to make sure you have enough funds. But read queries, for example, in Ethereum, they are free. Same thing in Bitcoin. So you get all these applications that really just blast the nodes and just get all this information from them, but not really bring any extra value. In Hedera, you have to pay for those reads in order to make sure that people are not just reading off all the data from the nodes.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. So it is a different fee model for people coming at Hedera from different distributed ledgers or different technologies. As you can see, go to hedera.com/fees, and it provides a really good overview of it. And what Pablo is talking about right now is that this crypto get account balance is the actual API that the TypeScript SDK is going to be calling. And you can see that there's actually no fee associated with this query. So definitely a good thing to note. So this looks like we're all set up here. So we're importing our JavaScript SDK. We're grabbing our keys from our environment and our account ID. We're connecting to the Hedera network. And then we're setting up an account balance query and executing it. And then we're actually just logging the results. The one thing that I'm not doing is actually calling this asynchronous function we just wrote. And then I'm going to just format this document to clean it up a little bit. And so now we should have everything that we need to actually write our first transaction to Hedera, or I guess better yet, our first query to Hedera to get our account balance. So we should be able to go back to our terminal here and run node index.js. And you can see that it was successful. We didn't get any errors. Nothing went wrong, which is kind of surprising for a live demo. And so for my account is 0.0.1249 with a balance of about 1,000 HBAR, or I guess test bar, because this is on the test network. So this is actually all that I had for our first query. I'm going to do one more demo here before kicking it over to Pablo, actually, which will be your first transaction. And so transactions are a very different kind of concept for Hedera. Like Pablo kind of touched on earlier, when you're writing to Hedera, you need to pay fees. You need to, there's more complicated things going on, I guess, with Hedera transactions and more things going on under the hood. So we're going to walk you through some of those right now, and we're just going to do a crypto transfer example. So I'm just going to create a new file. I'll drag it over here so we can actually, copy and paste what we're using from this other file. We'll copy and paste the dot environment here. We'll actually just copy and paste most of this, and then edit it as needed. So for a crypto transfer, we actually obviously don't need this account balance query because we're not getting the balance. What we need to import is the crypto transfer transaction. Let's not save those. I just closed my other window, so it's a little cleaner here. So what we did is all we did was import a crypto transfer transaction instead of the account balance query. We can leave the way that we're actually getting our keys in our account from our environment the same. We can leave our connection to Hedera the same. The only thing that we actually need to change is the way that we're running this account balance query. And so the difference would be we'd have a transaction, which is is a new crypto transfer transaction. And if you're not already following it, all of Hedera's APIs and all of Hedera's SDKs really kind of follow the same builder pattern, where we can add a sender and we can say that this is our operator account. So I'm going to be sending it. We can add a recipient. So Pablo, do you have a testnet account ID I can use?
Yes, the one I will be using today, it's 17210.
17210. Meant to do add recipient here. 17210, and you'll be getting all 10 of those H bars. We're going to set the memo. So anyone who's not familiar with Hedera, Hedera's cryptocurrency has a memo field attached to all of our payments. So anytime you're sending someone cryptocurrency, you can encrypt a message here. You could log some data that's associated with this payment. You can do a lot of different things. I'm just going to say, hi, Pablo. And we can build this and say that the client's going to be the one actually eventually submitting this transaction. So this is actually just a little variation of that model that we saw before, where I actually executed this transaction as I was building it. Just doing this to show that there's different ways to execute the transactions, but you could call it here and you could execute it and say we want this client to execute it. So this is actually all the difference is you have to change what you're importing. We want a different type of transaction. All you're going to do is build it differently to match the specifications on the API that you would like, and then execute it. And we're going to now try to run this crypto transfer transaction and send 10 HBAR to Pablo over here. We will see how this works. So node crypto transfer.js. Awesome, and we didn't get any errors. That means that this is actually the successful result of this response. You'll notice that this actually probably isn't a super helpful error message. And personally, this is something that I would probably go to the JavaScript repository on GitHub and say, hey guys, is there any way that we can get a better error message here that says, you know, this was a successful transaction or something like that. But one of my favorite things, and probably the last part of this tutorial here, is we're actually going to go to Dragon Glass. And we're actually going to be able to look up this transfer that I just did on their mainnet. So Dragon Glass is a block or network explorer for Hedera Hashgraph. And so you can go to app.dragonglass.me, and it'll eventually send you here. You can toggle and go to the public test network. And let's see what account I just tried sending to Pablo. So 17210. And we're going to look up this account ID here. And so you can see that he actually just got a payment that says, hi, Pablo. So this is actually, you know, a great example of the compounding network effects of public networks like Hedera. We have this completely unrelated company that's building this cool service that we're able to leverage and integrate with. So awesome. That actually ends my short demo of Hedera's new JavaScript SDK. So that branch that I was working on is 0.8.0 beta or something like that. And so the goal there is that over the next couple of weeks, you, others in the community watching this, are actually going to test it out, provide feedback, let us know if it's working, if there's some unhelpful error messages or success messages. And based on that feedback, we're actually going to bump that to version 1. And this will be version 1, hopefully, of the Hedera JavaScript SDK. But with that being said, Pablo, I'd love to kick it over to you.
Yeah, well, first off, I love it. We're one step closer to V1 on Hedera, which it's exciting.
Yeah, a lot of people think V1 is really just the platform and the services, but there's so many, you know, there's so much downstream software from the SDKs to the tools to the block explorers that all have to be kind of in sync on these changes.
Yeah. Let me go ahead and start sharing my screen here.
Absolutely.
And well, I think I got the whiteboard set up. So
yeah, I can see it great.
Perfect. Today we're going to be going over how you can code and deploy your first Hedera application straight from your browsers. No extra IDEs needed. No, nothing out of Visual Studio Code or Eclipse or anything. All you'll need is Chrome, Brave, or Opera browser, download Composer, get some HBAR, and have a little bit of background in Solidity. Now, we'll start with talking a little bit about what is behind all this. And is this blocking it by any chance?
I can see your computer. I can still see the screen.
Okay, I guess the thumbnail video doesn't show there. Anywho, HashJS is a JavaScript API that allows sandboxed access to your Hedera account, a little bit like Hedera JS. So it gives an application full access to your private key without actually giving access to the private key. So you can essentially do everything you would, send and receive HBAR, deploy smart contracts, and soon you'll be able to upload files and download them. And once HCS is released, you'll be able to listen to topics.
Oh, awesome.
So it will open up a lot of possibilities for applications working right out of the web browser environment. Now, what does it mean to you as a developer? Well, for starters, it's more secure. So if you're building a web app and you have to import your key, like literally onto the browser environment, that's something that could be hacked by someone, even as simple as a jQuery library being imported could access your key, and that's dangerous. Or if you are holding a customer's keys, well, recently the European anti-money laundering laws, version 5, comes into effect in January 2020. And if you're holding a user's keys, you're liable to do two things. One is sign up as a financial entity. So you'll be treated differently, and KYC every single one of your customers. Now, this doesn't need to be the case if you let your users hold their keys, which ultimately means that they are the custodians of their own funds. With HashJS, you're able to do those things, as well as we added extra support for hashname service, which is a domain registry that gives anything on Hedera a human readable name, such as Pablo.hh or Cooper.hh. So you're able to send money to someone with a .hh domain, which is native in Hedera, without having to know their account ID, or even if they want to update it, or if you have multiple applications which may interact with different contracts or file IDs, you just give that name, and that's what you have your people, your developers or other users interacting with it through.
I actually didn't know that HNS was integrated with HashJS. So I obviously knew that HashJS is a easy to use JavaScript library that connects to Composer and makes it super nice that I don't have to worry about managing keys for my users. But I actually didn't know how it's integrated with HNS. Could you maybe talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so HashJS just provides basically full access to the Hedera JS SDK. So what we do in the background is maintain a local cache of when you queried for a domain. And so it maintains the name and the account ID that it means, or the smart contract ID. So you're able to simply put, for example, here, we have the crypto transfer, which is the account ID here, or type domain.
Oh, awesome. So you're really actually using it as like a one-for-one replacement with a human readable public key.
Yes.
Hedera took away public keys and was like, here's this nice number string for you that'll work with shard and realms. And you took it kind of a step further and said, I shouldn't have to deal with those numbers at all and things like that.
Yeah. So if you're a team of developers working on different applications, you now are able to point to a beta version, a prototype version, or a production-ready environment and switch them back and forth if need be.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Or you could do kind of like versioning with different types of domains.
Yeah.
Well,
and most importantly, when you're sending messages back and forth on Hashgraph consensus service, you'll be able to route topics easily through this type of domain name system.
Oh, interesting. That makes sense a lot. It's cool to see that you have plans for Hedera's consensus service. For anyone who is tuning in and isn't aware of what Hedera's consensus service is, it's just the upcoming product that'll be launched on the Hedera Hashgraph network. Really good white paper that was co-authored by Brian over at IBM that Pablo could pull up, but it's just on hedera.com, and highly recommend that you read it.
Consensus service.
It's hedera.com/consensus service.
Oh, okay. Consensus service.
With a dash in between. My apologies.
Oh, I did it automatically.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. So if you actually want to learn more about what we're talking about and ways to actually send not only cryptocurrency or files or smart contracts and do those things on Hedera, this is a really unique way to send decentralized messages. And it's really interesting because it should be available in the next couple of months. That Pablo is already planning on how to integrate it into his product suite.
Yeah, it opens up for a lot of possibilities. I mean, simply put, you can play a video game where you have 2, 3, or 10 people or even more sending messages to the same topic, and the user would accept whatever messages were actually on time through the consensus service, which would provide a timestamp saying, well, did you shoot first or did you move first? Well, you'll know exactly, and everyone else will know exactly, which then they can submit something else on a platform, which really opens up a whole host of possibilities for video games, as well as other financial applications.
Oh yeah, not just video games. It's super exciting. But it's cool that you're planning on integrating in HashJS.
So let's go back here. There we go. Yes, so you're able to use hashname service for any interactions and as well as just anything inside Hedera. So you can do all sorts of things. And something like this wouldn't work without a wallet that integrates it, which is where Composer comes in. Composer is a browser extension that implements the HashJS functions, the triggers, the pop-ups, and provides a clear interface where you can easily approve or deny crypto or any transactions on Hedera. And it allows you to connect seamlessly between testnet and mainnet. I know it can be an issue for people developing, but make it as easy as just clicking here.
Yeah, I was actually on part of the team at Hedera that was working on some of our community testing program tools, if anyone remembers those, like the browser extension and the daily timestamp. And this mainnet to testnet toggle is something that actually would have probably saved us, an aggregate a couple hours over the course of those configurations and setting up our environment and all that. So it's awesome that that's actually a new feature that it seems like was added.
Yeah, we added quite a few features. Like you can look at transactions, you can get the transaction IDs, and then go into Dragonglass and literally just paste this and it will work.
That's awesome. And so for anyone who, if you're not coming from a blockchain background or a distributed ledger background, all this really is a regular Chrome browser extension that acts as a browser-based cryptocurrency wallet. So
just like MetaMask here.
Yeah, it's just like MetaMask, but for those who don't know who MetaMask is, it's a way for you to hold your actual private keys and those tools that you're able to use to sign transactions and prove that those transactions are coming from you. So Pablo and the team at Hashing Systems has built this really nice Chrome browser extension that lets developers connect to it so that you as an end developer don't have to build a new Chrome-based wallet extension or something that manages those keys every single time. We can all collectively as a community say, hey, we're going to standardize and support this and work towards, getting that one really successful or one really well adopted browser extension have those features that everyone wants. And it's cool because it sounds like you're building this ecosystem with HashJS that makes it really easy for other developers to connect to Composer. Yeah. And really just building up on top of Hedera's JavaScript SDK. So it's like really these kind of compounding network effects of your projects working together.
Exactly. Interoperability is vital for these types of projects where anyone could theoretically take these triggers and the functions that are called through HashJS and potentially integrate some sort of mobile wallet. So instead of triggering a Composer extension, which is done through the CDN in HashJS, it could be triggering an application on mobile. So this is all about just standardizing triggers and pop-ups so you're able to really build a unified user experience so that we can build upon it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Now, that's a little bit about Composer. Currently, you're able to deploy, crypto transfer, pretty much everything that's available right now with HashJS.
I saw you're also allowed to go play PlayHash with Composer now.
Oh yeah, let's check it out.
For anyone who isn't aware, PlayHash is a pretty cool project that's built on Hedera, just a simple little betting game.
Yeah, let's just make sure I'm on the right network, and you can just click play now.
But it's actually the latest project that added Composer and HashJS as an integration. So they added this JavaScript library that me and Pablo are talking about. And you can actually, instead of using the Hedera mobile wallet, you can click on Composer right here like you did. And so you can pay through this JavaScript library and this browser wallet, which is pretty cool. It's a great demo of how someone who doesn't even have to talk to you can integrate with these tools.
So now I just sent it with this account, and I can check the results here.
Little plug for PlayHash.
Yeah.
You lost.
Lost.
But that's awesome. Okay, cool. Just a little side note here.
So just to show, it goes to show how easy it is for the end user to use something like this.
Yeah, absolutely.
PlayHash
and the interoperability across the whole ecosystem. So you can go to the next application, and instead of having to download a new wallet that works with that application, you can integrate with this, and it's a nice user experience.
Exactly. And speaking of a whole new application,
good transition there.
Yeah, that's a great transition. Because we're talking about console, which is really just another way to use Composer and HashJS. We took a lot of the functions available inside HashJS, like deploy and interact with smart contracts, and build a integrated development environment that uses Solidity compilers to be able to take away a lot of the extra steps that you have to do in order to deploy your own smart contract on Hedera. So you can pretty much do all of this out of the browser over here. Right here. So you can, there's a quick start here on the console. By the way, it should be available also on console.hashingsystems.com. I'm just going to beta because there's a couple of cool features that we haven't released yet to the public that I would love to show y'all.
There's always secret features.
Let's see. So yeah, you have a quick tutorial on how to use it, but it's honestly really, really straightforward. You can click here. You got different contracts.
Okay, so these are each just to slow down a little bit. So each of these, this is just a browser-based website. You can click on these, and these are templates for Solidity smart contracts like you could deploy on Ethereum or some other network, right?
Correct. So you get a simple hello world, a coin contract, NFT, which is a simple ERC-721 standard contract, or just a boilerplate.
Could you briefly touch on what 721s are?
Yeah, so we'll open up the coin contract.
We can go
first.
Back to it too.
Yeah, so we'll open up the two coolest ones personally. We have an ERC20 contract. This is a really basic one, so it doesn't completely implement all the functions of an ERC20, but it really sets the stage. You're able to emit events, you can mint tokens, and you can send tokens to different individuals.
And so for anyone, just keep pausing here to recap. Anyone who's not familiar, ERC20s is the Ethereum standard that really kind of set off the ICO craze. It lets anyone super easily create their own token and define how many there are and kind of the rules for what this token are. So a lot of the popular tokens out there, whether it's like Brave's attention token and some other things, are actually just tokens that implement this ERC20 standard that Pablo is talking about here.
That's correct. So this is the ERC20 standard, which we'll touch upon in a little bit. We're actually going to deploy our own.
Ooh.
And also crypto NFT. NFT stands for non-fungible token. So regular tokens are fungible. You have one token or like $1. $1 is the same as one other dollar. So I don't care if you give me this dollar or this other dollar. Now with NFTs, they're non-fungible for a reason. They have a unique history. They have a unique ID, which allows them to be, well, unique. So you can have a unique cat in CryptoKitties. That's what set off the craze in Ethereum with unique cats that vary in rarity. So one CryptoKitty is not the same as another CryptoKitty. So they would have inherently different values. And here we have a ERC 721 contract, which actually, well, it's multiple contracts inside here. So as you can see, we support different complexities in contracts. And you can simply deploy it by clicking deploy and testing it in debug, and you'll have your own ERC 721 contract.
Super interesting. I assume we're going to walk through maybe an example of debugging one of these.
Yeah, so well, let's see. So we have also the empty project and the hello world project.
For anyone who's following along, feel free to go to beta.hashingsystems.com, or I don't know, maybe console.hashingsystems.com is a better URL to send people.
Yeah, either or. I would highly recommend going to console if you want the most stable user experience. They should both work under the same login, so you'll be okay.
But yeah, go in there, play with these example contracts that we're walking through right now, and if you don't have Composer installed, be sure to check it out and how it all works together. So definitely something that you can follow along on your end.
And if you need a testnet HBAR, I have a little bit, so we can
also send you test bars if you need. Test
bars, yes, testnet bars.
I just get tired of differentiating between which networks. So I'm hoping that we can standardize on calling them test bars. I haven't decided or figured out what we're going to do with like test tiny bars and all these things. It's a separate problem.
Oh, the next guy is going to figure that one out.
Yeah, I'm just the test bar guy.
Yeah. So we can deploy a simple hello world program here. Now let's say I did something wrong. I don't know, I forgot to add a return variable, but I'm actually returning something. It will actually fail to compile.
Oh, awesome.
So it will tell you exactly where it went wrong. If you have multiple things that went wrong, it will tell you that as well.
And so what is this querying against? Is this running against a version of Truffle? Is it running against Hedera's APIs? Like when you say it's wrongly formatted, where is it attempting to define what that correct format is?
So we have a Solidity compiler on the browser.
Okay.
We used to deploy from here. We plan to integrate more complex Solidity compilers, so you're able to simply add import, say crypto NFT.
Oh yeah. So you could not have to have a bunch of them in one file like you did.
Exactly. So we want to really just make the experience easier. So adding things like this, things like add import, and then you want to import from a Zeppelin GitHub, well, you just go github.com, a little bit like Golang.
Yeah.
You're importing from different repositories.
That's
really going to make life easier for a lot of developers.
Says the guy that probably has like 6 contracts copied into that crypto NFT example.
Yeah, you should see the wrapped HBAR, which we'll get to a little bit later about when the Gitcoin hackathon. That was, I think, 5 or 6 on the bank contract.
That makes sense. But that's awesome that it'll have some real-time debugging there for you.
So it's a simple sandbox for you to deploy. So we can try here, hello future. And I know it's a little dark, but it says hello future. And when you click submit, you can set the expiration time, which I'm not sure if it's been implemented yet inside Hedera.
I do not believe that it has. I think that that's something that's coming as part of that V1 and Hedera is moving out of beta. I think that everything has a permanent expiration time, and once that is implemented, we'll be provided with a standard default expiration. I don't actually know, but once it is implemented, we'll have documentation updates and all that good stuff. But for anyone who doesn't know, one thing that's unique to Hedera's fee structure is that we do charge rent. So if you are storing a contract or storing a file, you need to incentivize not only the computers that are currently storing that file, but if a computer joins the network in 3 or 5 years and they're still being asked to store this file, you need to continuously incentivize them and compensate them for doing so.
Yeah,
so we have the concept of rent.
Yeah, otherwise you have a like heavy tail problem where you just got terabytes of data from people that
don't have any rent. Yeah, and they don't even have any stake or interest in it, or it could be a completely dead contract or dead file. So that's kind of Hedera's answer to that right there.
So truly building a long-term solution, a long-term blockchain.
It's the goal. But that's awesome. So you click deploy, it pulls up Composer.
Yes, so it pulls up Composer with a smart contract deploy pop-up. Now here we have the transaction cost in HBARs, denominated in HBARs, as well as in dollars. And we have a message we want to put in this contract, and we just clicked accept. I'm actually deploying on mainnet.
Oh, awesome.
Cool.
Just go straight to mainnet. I always love testing in production.
Right.
If you're watching this, you should probably test your contract on the testnet a few times.
Yeah, let's just do it on testnet. Oh wait, no, I'm on testnet. I don't know what I was saying. Yeah, I'm on testnet. Good thing.
We're safe. We're safe.
Yeah, we're safe.
That way, if this contract happens to deplete his operator account of funds, it would be test bars instead of actual HBAR.
Exactly. So you can see here, there's the bytecode that it was generated locally, and this is the transaction that we sent to Hedera. And you can also view all the debugging that we've done before. So if the other window over here is a little small, that's for a reason. It's because this window is meant more for programming. But after you deploy, you can really see what's going on.
So yeah, it's like real-time terminal output kind of.
Yes, you can't type on it yet, but we'll foresee that changing once the CLI comes out.
Oh yeah, awesome.
So here we have the contract ID, so you can check that out on Dragonglass and the parameters we sent. And here we're calling the contract. This is all functions that you can call. So theoretically, someone could take something like this, the IDE, and implement it in HashJS and create their own version.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so for that contract call you just did, what it really did is it was basically HashJS in the beta version of console, triggering Composer to pop up and request that information. Correct. And then the Composer browser extension is essentially formatting and signing that transaction securely in an environment that has nothing to do with this website, and then kind of passing it back to the website for it to submit to Hedera. Is that how it's going on?
Correct. So we have this pop-up gets triggered by the website, and the pop-up is actually generated by Composer. So a website can't control what's on the pop-up. It can only say, I want to do this. And the Composer will take that transaction and display it to the user in a easy to view way, not just like a JavaScript or JSON or just a coding object.
Yeah, it provides a nice API to securely pass data, I guess, to and from Composer.
And if you're into tinkering, you can change stuff here as well. So if you really don't know what your gas fee might be, or if your contract is really, really big and it wasn't able to dynamically allocate it, you can increase those values here.
That makes sense. And so if someone didn't want to use Composer for this, you could have built like a different version, kind of like Play Hashes, where it's like a QR code that you have to send a transfer to or something like that. So if you want to look at what a UX would look like if you're not actually using a Composer-like browser extension, go to PlayHash and just look at it. He has a way that it'll show you kind of what it looks like to send from your mobile wallet. Correct. And I think anyone who has experience doing this will acknowledge that the Composer in a browser-like extension just provides a better experience. So this is an example. You could do this with anything where Composer versus the mobile wallet are just different tools to sign off and submit those transactions.
Now would be a good time to mention things like Composer are just tools. Now, where the true value lies is where you deploy an application that's interoperable, and Composer is just a tool that lets you get there. Now you can interact with the deployed contracts from, for example, a JavaScript smart contract, or sorry, not a JavaScript, on a JavaScript SDK directly. So after you deploy this, because maybe you don't want to deal with Solidity inside your JavaScript environment, you can just deploy it and then interact with it using the JS SDK Cooper mentioned earlier.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. So like this, when you're calling this parameter here on the smart contract, this is just a browser-based GUI to do it. You could easily go into the Hedera JavaScript SDK that I gave a demo of earlier, plug in this account ID where this contract is, basically say, hey, go to this contract, and I want to call this function parameter or use this contract.
Correct.
So that's really the beauty of the public network, is that whether you're using this thing, a different tool, you can build it yourself, you can go straight to the API level. But this contract now exists on the testnet, and you can actually go and look at it yourself. You can go and pull this up on Dragon Glass, and it'll always be there.
Correct. So here we can try to update the contract. And instead of saying hello future, we say hello Cooper. So now when we call that, it's not going to return hello future, it's going to return hello Cooper.
Oh, awesome. And I think Dragon Glass actually just implemented smart contract params. Do you maybe want to pull that up and see what it looks like to, maybe it doesn't work on testnet yet?
It could work on testnet. The only thing that I don't know if it will work will be the params, because they're going to definitely be encoded. So the way they will show to the end user will look a little bit like this. So let's say we do something here.
I guess that's a good homework assignment for anyone watching, is that you can go inspect what this contract actually looks like on Dragon Glass.
So as you can see up here, this is what it will show on Dragon Glass, the function parameters, which are really just encoded.
Yeah.
So what you have to do is take the API and convert this essentially, which I'll show you just for reference. In the new version of console, you'll be able to just copy this. And this will actually give you...
That's one of the beta features, huh?
Yeah, so if you can see here, we got the function name, the ABI data, and the function call, everything. So you're able to use this information to create the HashJS call so you can interact with smart contracts. So you can potentially replace this to hello plus current user. And if you're in the JavaScript environment and you have that function, it can return a string and you can update it dynamically, which we'll get to after we deploy our first, or probably like my 7th now, ERC20 on Hedera.
Yeah, let's have me stop distracting you, and let's move on with this tutorial. I'm just too excited about being able to do this from the browser.
So let's talk a little bit about my HBAR tokens.
Another one of your famous projects.
Yeah, this is basically, we try to eat the dog food as we're making it to make sure that it's interoperable and it's usable. And you'll see that trend going with the different applications we built. First, Composer, which really gave rise of HashJS. So we had to make sure HashJS worked well and interacted well with the wallet. That, well, it provides enough features and the features work. So otherwise we couldn't build something like Composer. And the reason we built Composer was because we really needed something like that in order to create something like hash name service. Because again, we don't want to hold the keys for the users, because that ends up being a huge liability in both legal and hacker-wise security. So all these applications work building upon each other, and they could work separately or together, but in reality they're different products, and that's why we release them as such.
Yeah, and anyone coming from Ethereum or these other ecosystems are probably very happy that some of these tools are starting to become available for Hedera development.
And one of the first ones we released was MyHBAR tokens. So before we built HashName service, there was this idea that we should build a wallet where you can interact with smart contracts as well as interact with your own balance. So as you can see here, I have a bunch of random tokens we created. I believe this one we started passing it out on Twitter just for people.
I remember that Twitter airdrop.
And here we're going to delete that one and create a new one. You can view your balance, view the balance on another. Well, this one, I don't know if it should work actually. It's a testnet. And we have my current balance. You're able to send, let's say, what's your testnet account?
That's a good question. Let me check. Try 0.01249. It's an early testnet ID. We'll see if that works.
Success.
Perfect.
So,
and the nice thing is about Hedera, unlike some other networks where like if you actually entered a wrong public key or completely invalid information there, it would just reject the transaction outright and be like, why are you sending it to an invalid address? Which is another nice thing.
And you still get all those same features, safety features when you're working with the hash name service, because in the background, you're really making this transaction. It's just that you're first pulling the account ID from hashname service. So if someone mistyped it on this dashboard, it won't really affect the end user experience.
Oh, wow. So even if someone types in an invalid HNS name, the Hedera APIs will reject it because there's no valid mapping, I guess, within the contract?
Correct. So it will return
it
will return 0 or it will return maybe 0.0.
Yeah.
And that Hedera won't accept it either way.
Yeah, no more accidentally burning your ERC20 tokens, guys.
So now that we understand a little bit about my HBAR tokens, just mentioned you can fork it on GitHub, which means it's completely available, exact same code. And you can use it, or you can read this if you like, and how you can get it started. Very simple to use, and there's a couple of test contracts on mainnet that you can test. And yeah, that's my HBAR tokens. So
that's awesome. So it's really just a browser example for an end user, not a developer, being able to interact with these contracts, kind of like we're debugging it in console, but in a more actual kind of production environment.
Yeah. We've seen projects like AO Chain come out with their own decentralized exchange solutions.
Shout out AO Chain.
Yeah, it's a good project. And you can
okay. So it's a fork of my HBAR wallet, basically, and he integrated some type of decentralized order book or decentralized exchange on top of it. That makes sense.
So you can add other features. You're already making smart contract calls, so you're able to pull data from smart contracts, not just balance, but orders and anything else in that case.
That's awesome.
Let's get here. So
are we about to test all this out together?
Yeah, so we're going to test the ERC20 contract together. We have this contract I pulled up here, which contains more features than the regular coin contract. Now, this one is just really more, the one available here as a template is really something that gets users started. We pulled this one from GitHub, and it's just a simple ERC20 contract with Solidity version 4.24.
That makes sense. And so if you are out there looking for, reference contracts or other Solidity smart contracts that are out there, one of the only things that you have to probably know is that Hedera does run a specific version of Solidity. And so keep that in mind while you're looking for reference or example contracts out there.
That's right. And so we can just click deploy. If there's any changes we want to do, I mean, most of it is done through the constructor anyway.
Yep.
So we click deploy, we set our initial amount. Let's say we do 1,000 of these because it's a very rare token.
Yeah, and this is exactly how, like I said, most of the tokens that actually exist on Ethereum or you heard about in the ICO crazes of the past couple of years are just use the standard and are basically the same contract that are redeployed with different versions of these initial values that Pablo's plugging in right here.
So I put 1,000 tokens, called it a virtual meetup, 8 decimal units, and the token symbol. Pretty simple. I click deploy. I may need to just bump this up a little bit just because it's a bigger contract and we don't want it to fail in the virtual meetup.
Yeah, and one of the nice things is that Hedera, if you send extra transactions, I believe with smart contracts, I think Pablo might have more experience with me here, is if you do pay extra on that transactions, it should return you the gas that you don't use.
Correct. So
Pablo could
it
clarify.
will have a fund debit credit, and it will have you paying, but it will also have you be debited in that transaction. And as you can see, this is a pretty big bytecode, but it contains all the information we need to run this ERC20.
Awesome.
So
that shows up in our list of deployed contracts. And are these all the different functions that are available within that smart contract?
Correct. So this is a special contract you can burn. And I believe you can allow other users to also transact with your token. So it provides extra features that companies like Compound and MakerDAO have been using for their transfer systems. So here we just need this number here, the 14282.
And that's the file address or the account address of the file on Hedera that the smart contract now lives at.
Correct. So we're just going to reload this page and we're going to add, here we go.
So you're telling my HBAR tokens that you now want to look at this contract address, right?
Correct. And so when we look at it, we all actually first try, go back here just to show you guys better. We are getting the name. So just because we don't have the name at the moment, when we add it, we want to get the name of the token before we do anything, so that we can actually include it here in the token name. So if we accept this.
What would happen if you didn't have a name in it already?
Well, then there wouldn't be an ERC20 contract or ERC20 compliant contract.
That makes sense. So it's just when it matched the spec that's expected. That makes sense.
So now we have
gotta love when you have good standards,
right? That's a shout out to. I'll just jump on this real quick because it's really important. Hashgraph improvement proposals.
I'm actually gonna plug this at the end. Don't worry, but go ahead.
Quick thing though, back at Helix, we were talking about what do we need to collaborate on standards so that they don't just stay on a Discord or a Slack or an email chain. And we thought, let's take a page out of Ethereum and Bitcoin's book and put it all on GitHub issues. So if you have ideas, proposals, questions that you want to change on the platform, you can go here.
I'll talk about some of these newer ones at the end of the meetup. But if you actually look at the contributors, you'll see that Pablo was the original contributor of this this repository.
Yeah, we created it back in March.
And kind of granted it to the community here. But yeah, it's totally great. And so those standards, this ERC20 contract is just a standard that was created through something, just like this, where the community says we want to be able to easily mint our tokens. These are the functionalities that these tokens should implement across the board. And if you want to build a token that matches this standard, this is how you do so. And so there's a lot of different unique functionality that's on Hedera. Specifically upcoming with Hedera's consensus service and using the memo field, that if you are interested in ways to use things, creating standards through the Hedera improvement proposals, a great way to go forward. But we'll talk a little bit more about this at the end.
Yeah, so that's ERC20, well, Hashgraph improvement proposal, HIPs. HIPs.
Or HIP.
It got shut down fairly quickly at Helix, but we should really get it going. Hedera's got HIPs. No other blockchain can say that. So yeah, we can add the token and it will show the balance at 0. This is a user experience thing that we're working on with Composer, where you still have to pay to query your the amount that you own. So here we have 1,000 tokens.
That's a smart contract query though, right? So
Correct.
I guess you could do a contract local call, but regardless, you're going to end up paying for that query, right?
Correct. So there's different ways that we're looking into this, maybe adding allowances, a little bit how the extension was set up previously.
Yeah.
Maybe have an allowance per minute or per 5 minutes. That's something that we're looking at. Where if you're constantly interacting with the website, it will automatically accept something if it's under the threshold that you're comfortable with.
Interesting. That makes sense.
So here, we can send, what was your account ID?
1249. Yeah.
All right, so
I have too many Hedera accounts.
I'll send you half of this one-of-a-kind virtual meetup token.
You better watch out when I EO this on Binance or something in a couple weeks.
Oh, I'll have half of them. That's great.
I'm not doing that. If you're watching this, don't listen to me.
Hi, SEC. Anyway, we see the balance has dropped now to 500. And this is essentially just a contract. And you're able to now send tokens back and forth. You can also be your personal balance here. And as you can see, it slowly goes down because I'm sending money back and forth. You can use this application to send HBAR as well. So here I can send Cooper's account 5 HBAR. So the same way you would do with a token, you're doing it with HBAR as well here. So it makes it really easy to just test out features and see what works, what doesn't.
Yeah, that's super nice. And if you're looking for like a starter project where I just want to play around with contracts or Composer and this whole kind of stack, I'm sure forking this project is a good way to get started there.
Yeah, that definitely wouldn't hurt. There's also a couple of other projects that were released on DailyStamp, which we'll introduce DailyStamp in a minute, but just talking about the projects that you can follow, there's tutorials where you can learn how to use different applications on Hedera, like how to deploy your own smart contract. And I believe there's a cool one for Dragonglass where you can connect Composer and the Dragonglass API. So HashJS really, but integrated with the functions for Dragonglass. So you're able to do the same way you were to do hash dot trigger crypto transfer. You'll be able to now access. So it kind of adds on to or augments the HashJS functionality and adds search accounts, account transfers, so all this mirror node stuff with Dragonglass, the historical data without having to make the user pay for the read. You can do that with this tutorial.
Super interesting. Awesome. Well, Pablo, do you have anything else of this demo today? It sounds like you walked us through the browser extension that users actually have and use to sign off on their transactions with.
Yes.
HashJS, which is the JavaScript library that if you're building a website, you're actually going to integrate to connect with Composer for that browser extension to trigger those pop-ups that we were looking at earlier. Composer is this nice interface for users to securely and decentralized sign their own transactions while retaining custody of their own keys. And then you took us one step further to console. You walked us through how you have these example contracts and this really nice deployment and debugging environment for smart contracts on Hedera.
Yeah.
And then further, once you've actually deployed those contracts, you showed us the website that you have that anyone can fork or easily use to interact with and basically have their own version of that token and that contract. And so it's awesome because almost all of these things are plug and playable, fully open source, available on GitHub if you want to download them and change them yourself, but also things that regardless of how much experience you really have, you should be able to get started and start playing around with and see what it's really like to build on Hedera. So these are a collection and a really full-featured suite of cohesive tools that work together. So I really, really appreciate you giving this awesome demo for us.
And there's one more thing that we would like to touch on, and that's the Gitcoin virtual hackathon that just ended yesterday.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of amazing projects and submissions that I'd love to bring up because they're all open source projects that you can take a look today and see what you can learn or what you can do with them.
Yeah, let's dive into that. Before we do that, one step back, what is Gitcoin for those who aren't affiliated yet?
So for the uninitiated,
that's Gitcoin, the word I was looking for.
Gitcoin is a solution. It's a little bot that sits around on your GitHub issues, and it connects your issue with a hash in a smart contract, and it allows somebody to deposit and maintain a balance against that issue. And that allows you to essentially put up a bounty, kind of like a bounty hunter, but you can prove that there's money behind that because the contract contains and says it so.
It's a decentralized open source bounty hunting tool.
Exactly. So you can crowdfund, you can freelance, you can do a lot of cool stuff inside Gitcoin. And so we are working with them because we see that this is one of the strongest platforms to attract the best developers. And as you can see here, we put up a bounty to create a decentralized exchange on Hedera Hashgraph. And as you can see, people can publish and say, hey, we need this or we need that. And here's one of the implementations Hamad submitted. And it works well. It deploys and runs. It has all the function for your C20 tokens. And there's a cool video on a video. Basically, you're able to get balance, get your order, do everything you want for a decentralized exchange. So if you want to deploy your own decentralized exchange today on Hedera, you could. Legally, we can't as a US-based entity, but other individuals could.
There's always fun legality problems. This is super cool. So basically, it sounds like Hashing Systems is working with Gitcoin in their last hackathon and threw up a bunch of these Gitcoin bounties. The last one's about a decentralized exchange. So someone had the opportunity to build the decentralized exchange for, it looked like $1,000 worth of HBAR.
Correct. So $1,000 for an HBAR. Another one here is the Hedera Pay widget, which allows people to tip and pay each other. And this one's very cool because it's just a simple button you press. So you're here, you want to pay, and you just choose how much you want to pay. And it will allow you to embed this on any website you want. Oh.
So it's like a super easy way that I could accept tips on my personal blog or something like that.
Correct. So it's a little bit like the Pay with PayPal button. You're easily able to just add this on, and we plan to add this onto our knowledge base called DailyStamp, which is a community-sourced question and answer system where you can, or soon can, tip individuals HBAR for answering your question. You can also pair your account here so people can know who to pay for. Yeah, and we'll soon have some, you can call them prizes, winnings, donations to the most reputable users. So keep an eye out on your score as you keep interacting on the DailyStamp website.
Interesting. So it's basically like a community forum for Hashgraph enthusiasts, and that will have some type of tipping and kind of incentivization mechanism inside there.
Correct. So we saw that there is value in keeping up a Zendesk account or a Yammer account, but for those who don't know, Zendesk is this solution that essentially lets you interact with your customers and giving them kind of like a frequently asked questions page. But it's really a one-way. So the company can talk to the users, but the users can't really respond. They have to send emails and tickets, which really doesn't help if you have a community of developers all maybe running into a similar issue. For example, using an SDK or getting started using HashJS. So where we see that here is that if you have a question like where can I, and the questions will pop up. So you can ask it again, or maybe you'll go here and say, where can I buy HBAR? That was my question. And I can see here people have answered, and you have your answer crowdsourced.
Cool. So it sounds like if you have any issues with any of Pablo's tools or getting started, you can totally just go to dailystamp.com, and it seems like an easy way to yell at him through there.
Totally.
That's awesome. Do you have any idea on when that tipping bot might get added in here?
So we're finalizing details on the hackathon. Christmas is coming up, so it's we might be able to get it before Christmas. If not, it'll be after New Year's.
Exciting. Cool. Well, is there anything else that you would like to share or chat about while we have you here, Pablo?
Well, if there's anybody with any questions, make sure to let us know here. You can also reach out to me or the team, really. It's on our support Slack. You can message us through here. It's just testing.
Yeah, that was funny.
And yeah, so you will be able to send us messages and yell at us if something's not working, or go on the website and grab a slice if you want. But yeah, hopefully you were able to sit through this entire introduction, this entire class, and get something out of it. We're really excited about the Gitcoin hackathon, and we're definitely going to be doing more things like this because it's a great way to incentivize the community. Because the biggest issue we saw with developers was that they want to get started, but they don't have HBAR. So there's no way for them to get started. One key thing that we should definitely mention is that if you have trouble creating accounts on Hedera, you can go to Composer, add new account, and you'll be able to create an account from here directly.
Definitely worth mentioning.
And there's no KYC needed. Well, social proof is what you need. You'll need to log in with Google. But KYC wise, we won't take your ID through this website, and you can just have an account on Hedera right away in under 5 minutes.
That's awesome that Hashing Systems is also looking at ways to make it easier for everyone to get onboarded and have accounts.
Yeah, it's
really nice feature there.
Thanks, Cooper.
Yeah, of course. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and just touch on the last couple kind of housekeeping items that I have here. Let's go ahead. Awesome. Cool. So you should be able to see my screen. We walked you through the Hadera JavaScript SDK. That's soon going to be released as version 1. If you want to, and you're a JavaScript engineer, or even if you're not a JavaScript engineer, I highly recommend you go check out that beta tag that I mentioned earlier. Look into getting started, maybe check out some of the things that aren't included in examples. If there's an example that you want and it's not there, just create a GitHub issue and ask people for examples. You should totally feel comfortable doing that. So next, I wanted to talk really briefly about ecosystem news. I wanted to introduce what we're calling Hedera Heroes. So it's a new way that you're able to contribute to the Hedera community, and you're able to earn HBAR for doing so. So really all that it is it's a GitHub repository, open source. You can see what's going on. You can see what everyone else is talking about. But basically, if you're a developer and you're interested in giving back to the Hedera community and lifting up other people looking to get started, you want to create getting started tutorials or specific examples of how you can use Hedera to solve a specific problem. If you're Pablo and working on best case examples for key management and solutions like that, or if you have an example application and just thought it was cool, we would love for you to go through this kind of process and share what you're working on with the Hedera community in this really nice way. And in doing so, we're actually going to reward you with $100 worth of HBAR. And so this is a great way where if you're working on anything exciting, if you've encountered a problem that you think other people might also have, this is a great way to be rewarded for that work that you've already put in. And it'll help everyone else in the future basically have a solution to those problems. So go to github.com/hashgraph, check out all of our repositories, but specifically Hedera Heroes is something that we published this week. And we're super, super excited about it. So if you want a way to earn some HBAR, this is a great way. And as Pablo talked about earlier, there's some new Hedera improvement proposals. So Hedera improvement proposals are ways that you can basically suggest updates to the Hedera API. You can request new features. If you think that there's a standard problem and there's not a solution yet, you can ask for help or clarity there. And again, it's just an open source repository at github.com/hashgraph. This one's Hedera improvement proposals. I wanted to take a few seconds just to talk about kind of how I look at it and how I use it personally. and ways that you can look at what's going on. So if you pull this up, I don't know if you can see all of this, but you can go to, you should probably just navigate directly there, Hedera improvement proposal. Hopefully everyone can still see this. But if you go to the issues, there's a couple that have been added in the past couple of days that I just wanted to talk about. So this is one that's actually coming from Pablo. Maybe he could chime in, but it was added maybe a month ago. And it's a way that you can actually use Hedera's smart contracts, file service, something like HNS kind of all together to not only access a website, but actually store that website and render that website as well. So I'm super interested in this. I don't know how many other people are, but if this is a standard or a problem that you're looking into or something that sounds exciting to you, like we really encourage you to get involved in this conversation. Even just saying that why it might be interested to you or why it might not be interesting is a good conversation that we're looking to get going.
Definitely, because something like this could allow you host a static website directly on Hedera, and all the files could be rendered directly from Hedera without having to go to a DNS, which if you've seen the news lately, a lot of the applications like my Ether wallet have been hacked because someone paid off someone that runs a name service or a name server in a country or hacked their GoDaddy account. Now, this wouldn't happen if everything is native inside Hedera, which is what we
totally makes sense. It's an interesting idea where it's like, if you have a website that's so secure, so important, and you have to guarantee access to it, is it worth decentralizing the entirety of a website? I don't know, but I'm happy that we're trying to answer it and, have these conversations. There's 2 or 3 other HIPs that are worth talking about. So this is a Hedera SDK for Go. A tool, for anyone who doesn't know, is on the product team at Hedera Hashgraph. And so this is a tool right here. And so a tool basically created a Hedera SDK for Go. I'm hoping that they can resubmit it. But it sounds like between this and the Hedera SDK for Swift, we're going to actually be getting official Hedera SDKs for these languages. So if you're a Swift developer or a Go developer, if you're not, feel free to chime in on these issues and say why it's something that you want, or if you think we should be supporting other languages. If you like Swift, but there's some specific tweaks of Swift or Go that you want us to include in that SDK, now is the great time to give us feedback. And one other thing that I'm super excited about is the portal refresh. So we're actually going through a couple phases of improving our developer experience and our onboarding. And so you can track what's going on here, and Ken's updating us as we go. So this is a great way where you can actually see Hedera internally and is using these things for our own improvements or things that we want to see down the road. And so similarly, if there's anything that you want that's not there, this is definitely the place that you can ask for it. Last touches of housekeeping here before I wrap up. Basically, our developer resources, I shared this last time as well. Oops. If you need real-time chat support, go to Discord. We're working on improving our documentation. And so if you're going through this and there's documentation's either not working, or if it's not what you're looking for, if there's another example that you want, feel free to flag that in the Hedera improvement proposal and just say, hey, here's a documentation example. This is what I would like to see. This is the issue that I'm having. It shouldn't be an intimidating thing to use. Check out our GitHub. If you need testnet access, you can go to portal.hedera.com. Within the next week or 2, hopefully we have those improvements that are in that issue starting to be implemented. I think you can also get testnet access by going to Composer. Pablo could clarify there. It's an easy onboarding. Yeah. And the last thing that I will leave you with is that our next virtual meetup is, Pablo had a great introduction to this actually, and it's managing historical data on Hedera while using Dragonglass's API, among other tools from the team over at OpenCrowd. So if you have or want to find details for that, please sign up for our group. You can go directly there at hedera.com/virtual meetup and sign up, and that'll keep you up to date on all the latest news, what the next meetups are, the link to this recording and all these example repositories we went through today.
Especially if you want to get started early for the virtual meetup, check out the tutorial on DailyStamp for Dragon Class.
Yeah, totally. Go check that out on DailyStamp and play around with it, see how it works, and get ahead of the pack here. So with that being said, that's all that I had today on our second virtual meetup. I hope everyone has an amazing holiday season, regardless of where you are in the world. Pablo, do you have anything you'd like to add here at the end?
I hope everyone has a great rest of the year, and Happy New Year to everybody.
Yeah, Happy New Year to you as well. And I look forward to seeing you all in 2020.
Yeah.
Take care. Thanks for joining us, Pablo.
You too.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.